Current day Oakland A's are a complete dumpster fire, from the on-field product to the stadium to the front office and to the ownership. Their own fans hate them, other fans see the franchise as a big joke, and anytime they're in national headlines, it's for the wrong reasons. But it wasn't always this way. In fact, the Oakland A's used to be the underdog darlings of the MLB back in the early 2000s. Led by Billy Beane and his new age analytical approach, they built 100-win teams with some of the lowest payrolls in the sport, and went punch for punch with the mighty New York Yankees multiple times in the playoffs. While these teams revolutionized the sport, it came with a cost. The fame that came with winning caused these other teams to take the same strategies and apply them to their own organizations, diminishing the A's competitive advantage that Moneyball once had. When you combine that with incompetent ownership that ran the concept into the ground, you end up here in 2024 with a huge mess. So how did the A's go from lovable underdogs to the laughingstock of Major League Baseball? The Moneyball roots date all the way back to the early 90s. It's important that we jump back this far to show that the franchise did spend at one point. From 1988 to 1990, the Oakland A's went to 3 straight World Series, winning one against the Giants in the famous 1989 Bay Bridge Series. During this time, they normally ranked among the top of the league in payroll. But in 1995, their owner Walter Haas Jr. passed away, and his group sold the team to Steven Scott and Kevin Hoffman, who weren't as willing to spend as Haas was. Their first order of business was tasking GM Sandy Alderson and assistant GM Billy Beane to cut payroll. Together, they started using sabermetric ideas to try and construct competitive rosters, with the money ownership allowed them to spend. This is where the Moneyball philosophy began, and they started to focus on stats like on-base percentage rather than batting average to build their lineup. But before they could start applying these principles, they had to carry out their ownership's orders and cut payroll. In 1995, the A's had a $35.9 million payroll, which was the 7th highest in baseball. By opening day of 1996, that had been cut down to just $19 million, which was the 3rd lowest in baseball. They let Ricky Henderson walk to San Diego in free agency, Dennis Eckersley was traded to the Cardinals, and in 1997, Mark McGwire was also traded to the Cardinals, where he went on to enhance his workout programs and start breaking records in St. Louis. And just like that, the A's stars of the 90s were gone, and it was a new era in Oakland. There wasn't much success early on though for Beane in the front office. From 1995 to 1998, they never finished above 500. In 1999, they had their first winning season in 7 years, and with their young controllable team, things were looking promising. At the turn of the century, it all came together for Oakland. Despite a payroll of just $31 million, which ranked 25th in baseball, they managed to win 91 games and the AL West title. They were led by American League MVP Jason Giambi, along with a bunch of other young players that started to break out. The A's finished the season 18-4 to win the division by just 1 game over Seattle, and they matched up with the New York Yankees in the ALDS. The Yankees were coming off back-to-back World Series sweeps, along with a 3rd title back in 1996. But the A's had their star power on the ropes as they headed into a deciding Game 5 with the series tied 2-2. A 6-run first inning from New York was just too much to overcome though, and Mariano Rivera shut the door, ending Oakland's breakout season. However, the baseball world was put on notice as they got to see the A's go toe-to-toe with the biggest franchise in the MLB. While the average team payroll would jump almost $10 million from 2000 to 2001, Oakland would stay pretty much the same, as they would drop to the 2nd lowest payroll in baseball. Moneyball was in full effect. The A's looked to build on their breakout season heading into 2001, but it wasn't looking like that would happen early on.
But first, Sunday night, he and the Rangers had to deal with the A's, who have far more questions than answers. A Major League worst 2-9 coming into the game and seen on ESPN. And A-Rod getting off right off the bat. Top of the first, he got it. Off of Gil Heredia. 3rd in as many games against the A's, 2-0 Rangers.
Oakland was 8-18 on May 1st, and by the All-Star break, they were just 1 game over 500. But something changed over the break, and they would come out on fire. Over the second half of 2001, the A's would go 58-17, outpacing the 116-win Mariners in that span by 5 games. They won 102 games, including a 28-4 finish to the season. They were defying the logic of baseball with Moneyball. While teams like the Yankees, Red Sox, and Indians were spending over $1 million on payroll per win, the A's were spending just $330,000 per win, and it was all built organically. Jason Giambi, draft. Eric Chavez, draft. Barry Zito, draft. Tim Hudson, draft. Mark Mulder, draft. Miguel Tejada was signed out of the Dominican Republic. Jason Isringhausen was traded as a struggling pitcher on the Mets and turned into an all-star closer in Oakland. Billy Beane said he saw something in Corey Liddell despite his struggles. He would go on to have 2 great seasons in Oakland as a starter after being a below-average reliever in Tampa Bay. If you're not going to spend, you can't afford to miss on your draft picks. Billy Beane and his front office hit on them consistently, and is one of the main reasons they were so successful. They matched up with the New York Yankees again in the 2001 ALDS, and this time they went into New York, beating Roger Clemens and Andy Pettitte in games 1 and 2. But then they lost the next 3 games of the series, falling to the Yankees once again. Despite the series loss, everyone again saw how the A's were able to compete at the highest level, even though they spent pennies on the dollar compared to everyone else. The dark side of not spending, though, is that your best players and fan favorites will eventually make their way to the open market. And in 2001, the A's got hit hard by this. Their best player, Jason Giambi, signed a $120 million contract with the Yankees. Johnny Damon got $31 million from Boston, and their all-star closer, Jason Isringhausen, signed the big deal with the Cardinals. While these may not seem like the biggest contracts today, Back in 2001, they were huge. 3 of their biggest producers were gone just like that, and to make it worse, 2 of them went to the main teams that Oakland had to get through to make the World Series. Billy Beane had to find a way to replace these stars so that the A's can be competitive again in 2002. Replacing Giambi's 199 OPS plus and Isringhausen's 265 ERA across 71 high-leverage innings was not going to be easy. They went out and signed veteran David Justice to a 1-year deal to try and replace Johnny Damon's production in the outfield. They traded one of their top prospects for Blue Jays closer Billy Koch to try and replace the vacant closer role. And finally, they used a combination of Scott Hattenberg, Carlos Pena, and Olmedo signs to attempt to replace Giambi's production, although that would be impossible. The 2002 season started just as bad as 2001 did. On May 23rd, they sat 10 games back of the first-place Mariners with a 20-26 record. Then, something special happened that would eventually change baseball forever. The A's started winning, a lot. From June 6th to June 24th, they went 16-1, which got them within 2 games of the first-place Mariners in a tight AL West race. By August 12th, the A's were still in striking distance at just 4.5 games back. Then they beat the Blue Jays, and then they won again, and again.
Fastball is clubbed high and deep, way back in the right center field, going back is Chris. He's a spectator, that's one left.
Now the 2-2 pitch, Mabry, it's a drive to deep right field. Vick is going back, he's gonna watch, and it is gone.
2002 A's own the franchise record. 18 consecutive wins. He deals.
And it's a line drive, he's in center field. Greg Myers moves to third. Sahara wins another ball game. 19 straight for the Athletics.
The entire baseball world was tuning in to see just how long this streak would go on for. When they matched up with the Kansas City Royals looking for win number 20, they got right after it, jumping out to an 11-0 lead through 3 innings. It looked like there was nothing that could stop this team until the Royals somehow managed to score 11 unanswered runs, tying the game heading into the bottom of the 9th. That's when Scott Hattenberg came up to the plate and took the swing of his life.
Now the pitch. Swung on, there's a high drive. Way back, right center field. Drop one in,
For the first time in American League history, the Moneyball A's had done it. They had won 20 games in a row. The streak would sadly end there though, as they would lose their next game to Minnesota. However, Oakland would still go on to edge the 99-win Angels out for the AL West title. Again, they ranked bottom 3 in payroll at just $39 million. Their 103 wins tied the Yankees for the most in baseball, despite the Yankees' payroll being over 3 times as much as Oakland. This was a really skilled and well-built baseball team. While Hollywood painted them as some scrubs who managed to defy the odds and win 103 games, that wasn't exactly the case. The movie focused primarily on David Justice, Chad Bradford, and Scott Hattenberg, who were all great players in 2002, and big contributors. But this team also included 2002 AL MVP Miguel Tejada, 2002 AL Cy Young winner Barry Zito, along with outstanding seasons from Tim Hudson, Mark Mulder, and Eric Chavez. This was not the up-and-coming team that they were 2 years ago. The Oakland A's had arrived. In the postseason, they would finally be able to avoid the Yankees in the ALDS as they match up with the Minnesota Twins. After trading victories for the first 4 games, the A's found themselves in a deciding Game 5 for the 3rd straight year. The Twins took a commanding 5-1 lead in the top of the 9th, but the A's used their magic in the bottom half with a 3-run home run from Mark Ellis to cut the lead to 1. But ultimately, it wasn't enough, as the Twins would end a historic season in Oakland. Minnesota had snapped their 20-game win streak and eliminated them in the ALDS that same year. 2003 would be much of the same for Oakland. Their payroll actually increased to $50 million heading into opening day, which would put them at 23rd in baseball. The team went out and won 96 games, clinching their 3rd AL West title in 4 years. And with a similar roster that had a little more playoff experience under its belts now, they matched up with the Boston Red Sox in the 2003 ALDS. Again, they went up 2-0 in the series, but after being walked off on in Game 3 and losing Game 4 by 1 run, they found themselves in a winner-take-all Game 5. Barry Zito versus Pedro Martinez, a face-off between the Cy Young winner and runner-up from a season ago. Pedro would give up 3 across 7 innings of work, and Zito would go 6, allowing 4. It all came down to the bottom of the 9th with the bases loaded.
2 out, 3 on. Lowe is ready, the pitch. Strike 3 call, the Red Sox win it. Derek Lowe pumps his fist. Bring on the Yankees. The Red Sox have hung on to beat the Oakland Athletics 4-2.
It's hard to even believe that you could lose a Game 5 in 4 straight postseasons, but the A's did it. From 2000 to 2003, Oakland would be tied for the best winning percentage in the MLB at .607. While ranking 26th in payroll on average. You could fault them for coming up short every year in the playoffs, but we see every year how random the MLB playoffs can be. What Billy Beane and his team did was special, and soon other teams would take notice of what the front office was doing. That year, Michael Lewis would publish the book Moneyball. It analyzed how Billy Beane and his front office used sabermetrics to build their team, and how they found deficiencies in the market.
I mean, the traditions of baseball are glorious, but the traditions of baseball are often at times inefficient. And you've got these inefficiencies in baseball that this one organization has sorted out and is exploiting. And I just thought, what an incredible story.
They also figured out that college star.
The secret was now out, and some teams would try to replicate it. High on-base percentage players became much more expensive, so Bean and the A's had to adjust their strategies to find new holes in the market to stay successful. The Tampa Bay Rays and their young GM, Andrew Friedman, were one of those copycats, and they would go on to make the World Series in 2008, despite having the second lowest payroll in baseball. The A's would miss the playoffs by one game in 2004 and win 88 games in 2005. But in 2006, they were back, winning the AL West again, and this time they swept the Twins in the ALDS, getting their revenge for 2002.
Crane's pitch, line down the right field side, by Kadire, fair ball in the corner. He's going to clear the bases. Chavez has scored. Payton has scored. Here comes Swisher. Here's the throw. He's saved. He's saved. Marco Scutaro.
That would be all for them, though, as they were swept by the Tigers in the ALCS in a series that was never really close. Their dominance in the 2000s would come to an end in that series, as their stars would either walk in free agency or be traded to get some value before they hit the free market. This included Barry Zito, Tim Hudson, Mark Mulder, Miguel Tejada, and Nick Swisher. Another dark side of the Moneyball strategy is that your competitive windows come and go. You don't have the funds of the Dodgers, Red Sox, or Yankees to be in the hunt every year. The 5-year stretch from 2007 to 2011 would be a rough one for Oakland, as they would never finish above 500. But that streak would end in 2012, as Oakland would enter its second era of success in the 21st century. Similar to the early 2000s teams, these A's got off to a really rough start as they sat in last place on June 1st. But from that point on, they caught fire and were the best team in baseball the rest of the way, going 72-38, winning the AL West for the first time since 2006. What's so interesting about this team is that most of their best players were rookies. Yoenis Cespedes finished top 10 in MVP voting. Jared Parker had a 3.47 ERA across 181 innings. Tommy Malone led the team in innings with 190, and AJ Griffin was fantastic after being called up in June. Josh Donaldson also caught fire, posting an 822 OPS from June onward. It was a fun team that the loyal fans of Oakland have been waiting on for 5 years now. They would match up with the 2012 Tigers, whose pitching staff consisted of 3 future Cy Young winners, and they would completely shut down the A's offense. An 11 strikeout complete game from Justin Verlander in Game 5 ended Oakland's season. But their future was bright as their roster was filled with a bunch of young talent. The following season, Oakland would improve with the superstar emergence of Josh Donaldson, who went from being known as a possible draft bust to a top 5 finish in MVP voting in the span of a year. Solid seasons from other guys like Bartolo Colon, Hall of Namer Coco Crisp, and Jed Lowry helped the A's win 96 games and a second straight AL West title. This meant that they would be facing off with Detroit again in the ALDS, and because they can't have it any other way, it came down to a winner-take-all Game 5. No matter how good Sonny Gray was on that day, it wasn't going to be enough to outpitch prime Justin Verlander. This would make it 6 straight Game 5 losses in the ALDS since 2000. I can't even imagine the pain that these fans felt. In 2014, they rolled out a pretty similar roster and ended up as the second wildcard team where they would go to Kansas City and got walked off on by Salvador Perez. This would be the end of the second competitive window for the franchise, as the offseason would be a complete fire sale. After Josh Donaldson asked the front office for an extension after his MVP caliber season, he was denied. And as a result, there was a lot of tension between him and the front office. Him and Billy Beane were not on good terms, and he was traded to the Blue Jays despite having 4 years left before he would be an unrestricted free agent. Donaldson would continue his path to superstardom in Toronto, winning the AL MVP the very next year and helping the Jays advance to an ALCS in back-to-back seasons. They let Jed Lowry walk in free agency as he would sign a $23 million contract with the division rival Houston Astros. All-star first baseman Brandon Moss was traded to Cleveland. Yoenis Cespedes was traded at the 2014 deadline because they didn't think that they'd be able to re-sign him that upcoming offseason. And finally, Josh Reddick would be traded at the 2015 deadline to the Dodgers. Just like that, the organization was back to square one as they would win just 68 games in 2015, following 3 straight playoff appearances. Billy Beane would say in an interview that offseason, "We've done it before, we've had to. The tough thing is you're talking about players who are really good players for us in a very successful period. It's tough having to do this every few years, but unfortunately necessary." And while that's understandable for a team that isn't spending like the huge market teams, Billy Beane and owner John Fisher abused this ideology in their next competitive window, which came in 2018. Through their farm system, they developed guys like Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, Sean Manaea, and Ramon Laureano, and paired them with vets like Blake Trinan and Chris Davis. Together, they won 97 games that year, a 22-win jump from 2017. They just so happened to be in the same division as the Astros, who were basically Moneyball on steroids. The Astros won the AL West, forcing the A's to play a wildcard game against the Yankees, in which they got steamrolled. 2019 would be no different, as the A's would again go 97-65, but the 2019 Astros won 107 games. So like the year before, Oakland's season came down to just 1 game versus Tampa Bay. In a Moneyball versus Moneyball matchup, the Rays would win 5-1, sending the A's packing again. After an ALDS exit in the COVID-shortened season and a failed playoff push in 2021, management would blow it all up. But this time was different. It felt rushed and unreasonable. In the 2020 offseason, they let Marcus Semien walk. They were unwilling to match Toronto's $18 million one-year prove-it deal. Semien would go on to prove it, breaking the second baseman's single-season home run record and finishing top 3 in MVP voting. Matt Olson was traded to Atlanta to be Freddie Freeman's replacement. Oakland didn't want to end up having to pay him after his final arbitration year in 2022. Olson would go on to sign a team-friendly deal, finish top 3 in MVP voting, and establish himself as one of the best first basemen in baseball. Matt Chapman was traded to Toronto for 4 players who would never really pan out. Chris Bassett was traded and went on to have 3 solid seasons outside of Oakland. And finally, the Sean Murphy trade was the icing on the cake for A's fans. When the A's went to trade Sean Murphy to Atlanta, he still had 3 years left before he became a free agent. And they even said that they would need a great offer to part ways. After Oakland declined to take the best player in the deal, William Contreras, the Braves had to bring in the Brewers so that Oakland could get the guy they wanted, that being Esteury Ruiz, along with a couple other prospects. The Brewers were happy to take a 24-year-old all-star catcher with a ton of control. Nobody had any idea what Oakland was doing, but John Fisher did. Moneyball was a beautiful thing that Oakland's front office executed to perfection throughout the 21st century. But as John Fisher's tenure prolonged, Moneyball seemed to become less about winning with a low payroll and more about simply just having a low payroll. He took the idea of Moneyball and abused it for his own gain. Fisher bought the A's for $180 million back in 2005, never really invested a dime into any of the rosters, and now the A's have a valuation of $1.2 billion. So I'd say it worked out pretty well for him. To succeed with a Moneyball strategy, you need 3 main things going your way. You can't mess up draft picks, you have to get good value in returns for trades, and the ideas that you're living by have to actually provide an advantage. If everyone's using similar ideas to you while spending more than you, you don't have a competitive advantage. Front offices have adapted, and now the sneaky ways that Oakland was finding gems are common knowledge. They've gotten little value out of all the stars that they've recently traded, and they also haven't drafted very well either. John Fisher and his ownership used the Moneyball ideas as an excuse to let their stars walk, because they always have and it always works out. Moneyball changed the sports world, and its weaponization destroyed the A's. Outside of a small handful of guys like Mason Miller, JJ Bleday, and JJ Wilson, there really isn't a whole lot to look forward to for this team in the farm. While their former stars are killing it on their new teams, the A's fans are forced to watch a terrible product every day. To be fair though, they aren't really watching anymore, and I don't blame them.